Welcome to my channel. These slides that are rolling by are an indication of some of the things that I cover on a regular basis in my videos. Once you have watched the video, I would appreciate it if you would click the like button and leave a small comment. It's really a big help to the channel. The YouTube logarithm, when it sees that, promotes the channel more and will be more viewers. I would appreciate that very much. Thank you for watching. Hello everybody, just a short video here recommending a book that I'm reading, something I usually do in the wintertime from the cabin, but as you'll see when I get talking about it here, the book sort of has some significance to me. It's based in an area of Italy where I spent quite a bit of time one winter, and I will explain that further as I go on, but it also talks about the partisans or the resistance fighters during the Second World War, and that was also something that was quite prevalent in the area where I lived when I worked on a farm for, 5 or 6 weeks, something like that, in 2007. Time flies, whether you're having fun or not. Doesn't seem to me like it's that long ago, but just looking up some of these photos that follow here, they were all taken in the late winter of 2007. So without further ado, I'll give you a little more information about the book, and then I will talk about the partisans or the resistance movement that was in the area where I was working. Not when I was there, obviously, but during the latter part of the Second World War. Not a very good screenshot of the book cover. The author's last name, last two letters, are obscured there by the percentage of the book that I've read already. Her last name is spelled P-E-T-C-H. I'll just give you a brief overview of what's happening in the book. Her mother dies, and as part of her inheritance, she inherits her mother's writings and diaries. Her mother was Italian, although she was raised herself in England. And most of the time the family had to speak English because the father didn't want Italian spoken in the house and everything. But anyway, she's reading her mother's diaries and discovers that her mother might have been part of the resistance fighters in Italy, and then she goes to Italy and stays at an agriturismo, like we would call a bed and breakfast here, I guess. But that is the basics of the book, and now I'll explain to you why it's kind of significant to me. This little clip of a map gives you an idea of the area. She's staying in the San Sepolcro area of Tuscany. The farm that I worked on was in the mountains above Arezzo. Directly below the farm you could see Falciano, and then Subiano, a larger town, and then the city of Arezzo. You could see all three from the mountaintop farm that I worked on, as well as you could see the Arno River winding its way off into the distance towards Florence. So it all takes place in Tuscany is what I'm saying, and if there's any truth to the story that she's writing about, it's probably the same resistance fighters that I'm going to tell you about in just a minute here. This is the main house or building on the farm. The current owners purchased it as really a rundown hovel. Even the stonework was being scavenged by other people in the area to build with, and they have spent a lot of money restoring it. The ground floor, where you see those 4 doors there, I guess, the door to the far right was the door to my little apartment. The door next to it that's open is the stairway that goes upstairs. The family has the entire top floor, and the other 2 doorways are to small apartments as well that they plan to rent to tourists. They hadn't done that yet when I was there. But beautiful buildings and beautifully restored. They've spent a lot of money on them, that's for sure. Originally, when it was a working farm, before the Second World War, it was abandoned after the war, but the original farmhouse, a family would have lived on the top floor as well, but the ground floor down below would have been for livestock. Cattle, pigs, whatever, would have been kept in barns, and the barn was the ground floor down below the residence. The farm was already named when they bought it, so they kept the name Val de Pozzo. A pozzo is a well, and they have spent their time there trying to find the well that's referred to in the name, and they've never come across the well. This is a sign just outside of the farm gate, private property, and a line across, no trespassing, no driving beyond that point. You have to open the gate to get in anyway. But the thing that I get the big kick out of is attention to the dog. They got this idea that they've got an ugly dog. They had a beautiful, what we would call a German Shepherd. In Europe, they refer to it as an Alsatian. It adopted me while I was there. Wonderful dog. I would have my meals with them. Well, I'd have my evening meal with them. Breakfast and lunch I did myself in the apartment. But I would no more than get back downstairs to my apartment after having had dinner when the dog would arrive and spend the night on the doorstep outside of my little apartment. And I asked the man of the house, Fabrizio, about about what happens, and he said there's no keeping him upstairs once you leave. He has to go down and guard your door all night. And he went on long walks with me, and the farm is almost in the middle of the Tuscan National Forest with hiking trails in all directions. And on my days off or time off, I would go for hikes in the forest, and the German Shepherd stayed with me all day. A little bit of background on some of the family members. Fabrizio, the man of the house, was a professor at the University of Siena, and I went into Siena with him one day, and he went to school, and I spent the day enjoying Siena. The lady of the house was a trained herbalist, a qualified herbalist in England, but not allowed to practice in Italy. She was English, so spoke fluent English. Fabrizio's mother was English, and so he spoke fluent English, and of course they both spoke fluent Italian. And they have two children, Clara, who was a teenager, 14, 15 years old at the time, and her younger sister, Gaialucia, who was preschool at the time. A lovely family. I thoroughly enjoyed staying with them. The book that you're looking at, Fabrizio was working on that book when I was there, and it was published later on that same year, so I bought a copy of it. It's a beautiful coffee table book, very scholarly, but with a lot of lovely photographs in it as well. When I was there, as I said, he was lecturing at the University of Siena and was trying to get tenure at the university. I discovered after I came back home that he was passed over and didn't get tenure. So the last I knew of him, he was lecturing at Oxford. They had moved back to England. They maintained the farm in Italy, and I don't know if they've ever returned or not. My main job when I was there was digging holes. It was a terraced hillside, the farm, but the terraces hadn't been worked since the end of the Second World War, so it was heavy sod. I was preparing areas to plant fruit trees and olive trees on the terraces, and later on we planted some of them before I left. But a lot of digging every day is what I did, and one of my mornings digging, I dug up this live ammunition, definitely left there or dropped there during the Second World War by either the Gestapo or the partisans, one or the other. And I just took that picture of it next to the little European cell phone that I was using at the time to give you an idea of the size of it. I gave it later on to Fabrizio, and I remember he put it up overhead on a beam in the barn and said that he would contact the police later on and have them come pick it up, because having been in the ground that long, I wasn't sure how stable it was, and I didn't want his children to get around it. Well, I guess it's about time I got around to explaining the story of the partisans, or the resistance fighters, that were active in the area of the farm during the Second World War, the end of the Second World War. that area anyway. This shrine to St. Rita is just outside of the gates to the farm, and I walked by it many times and finally had them explain the story of it to me. The story goes that a group of the resistance partisans were being tracked down by the Gestapo in the mountains, and one or several of the men involved, devout Catholics, prayed to St. Rita for help. St. Rita is the saint responsible for lost causes, is one of the ways that she's described. At any rate, after praying to St. Rita, a cloud or the fog or whatever descended, and a heavy mist was on the mountain, and the Gestapo were in the area, but they passed right by them without finding them. Well, after the war was over, about 10 years after the war was over, I guess, some of the men who were involved in the incident erected this shrine to St. Rita. I guess according to the sign there, in 1954 they put it up. And as I've said before, the town or small village really of Falciano is directly at the base of the mountain, and that's where these men lived. Now, every year on the feast day of St. Rita, whenever that is, the village of Falciano makes a pilgrimage and walks up the mountain to this shrine. I guess that explains why the book has sort of a special significance to me. I hope you'll read the book if it interests you. I got it, of course, on BookBub there. I don't know if I even paid anything for it, but very minimal amount. I haven't checked on Amazon to see what it might cost to buy a copy, but it's not a world-famous author or anything, so probably not a lot of money. Also, it's a very beautiful part of the country. I love all of Tuscany. I guess I love all of Italy. Everything that I've seen, I really love and enjoy it. Been back a few times. Love to get back again sometime. But if you haven't been to Tuscany, I would hardly recommend it. And staying at a place like, I guess this farm would now have been called an agriturismo, if they're back there running it with using the apartments to rent to tourists. But staying at a place like that makes it very special. You get to meet the local people and relax and enjoy the surrounding countryside. Well, I will close this down now and say thank you very much for watching.